Hey, hey, hey. Today I want to talk to you about letting go. So many of us struggle with letting go. And I think this is just such an important topic to discuss and maybe share a little bit of insight. And I would love to hear your feedback too on like your experiences with this. So I struggled with letting people and things go in my life for decades, decades, decades. And I didn't like the idea of upsetting people, right? I didn't want to cause disruption in my day to day. I don't like confrontation. Okay. I don't know if you're like that, but I'm somebody that just, I'm not a big person that enjoys confrontation. It gives me anxiety inside. I always feel guilty for speaking my truth to other people, especially if it's something that I feel like is a more negative and not a positive, like a problem, right? When there's a problem. And so for me, letting go was really, really something that was difficult. It was so difficult that for 40 years, I held on to 37 years of trauma. And I know that just is going to sound wild to somebody, but it's my truth. I was so afraid of letting go of my past that it almost killed me. Um, it hindered my life in major areas of my life. It disrupted every relationship I'd ever been in. There were patterns because I hadn't let go. I actually created unhealthy patterns in my life. Also with, the not letting go, I held on to people and things that should have only been around for like a season and not a lifetime. And so um there became a point in my life as an adult before that 40-year mark. I was actually in my 30s when I started letting people go and like cutting the ties, right? But what I didn't understand was it was still toxic. And the reason why I say that is because it was my mindset behind it. Um, my mindset was more like you handed me the scissors, so I cut them. My mindset was more like you crossed me, so F you. Um, it wasn't until just recently, just gotta be transparent, that's why we're talking about this. Until recently, this year, I hired a life coach last year, and I've been working with her for about a year. And I realized because of her teaching and what she's taught me and what I've learned is that letting go is healthy. It can be healthy. It can be such a beautiful tool when used properly. And what that means is I had to go and self-diagnose myself with each of my relationships with things and people. And I had to decide, why did I want to end it? Like, what was so important that made me let go? Was it something that, had transpired? Was it energy? Did our energy just not match? Was it something that didn't go and align with my core values and my goals? Like what is making me choose to dissolve this relationship, with things or with this thing or this person? And what I realized was I held on to a lot of people, especially people, not so much things, but people that number one were using me emotionally, spiritually, physically, sexually, like just being transparent. I held on to a lot of people who manipulated the circumstances and the situations for their gain. Um, I held on to a lot of people who told me that they loved me and cared about me when deep down they really didn't. Um, I held on to a lot of people who hurt me over and over. And the reason why I allowed it was because I didn't want to hurt them the way that they'd hurt me. Um, I held on to a lot of people who were very toxic from my former life, and I brought them into my current present life. And I've been doing the inner work and I've been growing and I have been really growing into my higher self and leveling my life up, and my energy is just so much higher and it vibrates differently, that those people that were not working on themselves but were still coming into my life with me and following me on my journey and still moving, progressing with me, um they hadn't changed or very minimal change, and it was hindering me because it was draining my energy and it was exhausting, and it creates burnout and it creates like frustration. It creates animosity. Like, it really can trigger you to take it out on the people, like, let's be honest, or on things, right? And so what I mean by that is the blame game. When we don't let things go and we hang on to them, when God's saying, hey, let me take this, it's a burden for you, you don't need it, or it's your time is expired with it, right? And we're not listening to that cue, and we're being, we're hanging on to it for like our own selfish gain, our own selfish reasons, or fear, or whatever it is. It's keeping that to not let it go. It's keeping that with you, right? You're holding on by the reins, and you're like, your hands are starting to bleed because you're holding on so bad, right? Picture that. Picture your hands like you're holding on to this cord and you're fighting to hang on to something that's no longer serving you or them. And your hands are starting to bleed, right? That's what it felt like. That's the only analogy I can think of. And what happens is that creates bitterness toward that person or thing. And it creates a wedge in your relationship and your communication and like the whole environment. And it's just because you aren't willing to just say, okay, I need to release this and let it go. And it's okay. You have to understand it's okay. We're meant to let things go. Um, we're not meant to hold on to everything forever. First of all, none of it is coming with us when we die. If you want to have things buried with you, whatever works and floats your boat. But I'm here to tell you that nothing comes with us when we die. And spiritually, where I feel like, we're a shell. Like, this is our body and it's a shell. It's an outer shell that we're using. It's temporary, but our spirit remains. And when you can start realizing our spirit remains, you're going to do more letting go, because you're not going to want to stay in places forever. And the comfort, it only stays comfortable for so long. It starts becoming detrimental to you and others around you. And so for me, letting go was a powerful tool that I had to learn to use, not just for my gain, but for other people's too, because I'm a better servant of Jesus Christ when I let the stuff go and it's not holding me down, weighing me down emotionally, spiritually, physically, weighing me down. And I can serve the Lord in a better way. I can be a better servant. I can be a better listener. I can be a better communicator. I can have empathy for people. I can understand situations so much better. And I can love people for where they're at and who they are without judgment, unconditional love. And that comes because I was brave enough to let go of people and things that weren't good for me anymore. And I read something just yesterday And it hit a note because it's right along with what I've been practicing and learning. And it said, I'm not gonna, don't quote me, but 100%, but it said something like, when you can understand why those toxic people attracted to you, because you attracted them, whether you like it or not. We attract everything and anything around us. You speak it into existence, you think it, I mean, but I mean, just it's amazing what the universe will do when we um when we really open up and we say things. They are power, our words are powerful, our thoughts are powerful. And what made you, like, what part of your toxic traits that you have worked on, right, or you're working on, created and aligned you to that person? And so that's a good self reflection, because you can take and say, okay, I know this isn't a healthy relationship anymore because I'm improving, but they're not. And like, I have to let this person go and it's okay. So you can set healthier boundaries. It doesn't mean you have to cut them out for the rest of your life. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, right? But you can set healthier boundaries to spend limited more, limit your time with them so your energy isn't drained, half an hour, 2 hours, and then go and refuel your energy. Do something good, get out in nature, ground yourself on the ground, with your feet, sing and dance in your kitchen or your living room, like just have a good time, read something positive, play something that's gonna make you vibrate higher, whether it's a podcast or a song or whatever it is, right? There's things and ways you can meditate. There's just, you can pray about it. Like, there's just so many things that you can do to change those circumstances and rewrite that script and rewrite that story. And so finding out what aligned between the two of you to bring you together in the first place will help you work on that toxic trait too, on that toxic behavior. So, for example, I had several business partners that I attracted in the beginning of my business. And when I started my business, I had 37 plus panic attacks a day. I had PTSD and anxiety and depression and tons of health issues going on. Um, and I was almost 400 pounds wearing a 4XL. And in that first 2 years, I attracted so many of the wrong people. And I say that with so much love. And it's nothing against them, as it's not like, don't take that personal if you're listening. But I attracted so many of the wrong people, right? And by attracting so many of the wrong people, I started, creating this team, but they were really toxic and they weren't in a time in their life to start wanting to do the work on themselves. They were behind me because they had seen where I was at now after doing it for a while and I was starting to grow and change. But they watched me from the beginning and they were like, oh, she's really been working on herself. I want that too. So we attract, a lot of people can be attracted to who we once were versus who we are now. And so it's so important to pay attention to your energy, because your energy is going to attract. And how are you feeling? You got to tap into your feelings and your emotions. So many people told me to shut my emotions off, that they were too big. I was told that I had too big of emotions. I was told that I needed to shut those off because they were hindering me. And for years, I literally shut off my emotions and it made me a bitter biatch. It just did. It was not a pretty picture. And then I got my life coach and she's telling me, I said, I'm an emotional creature. I used to say that about myself a lot. And I was like, and I don't know how to take it because so many people in my life have told me that that my emotions hinder me. And she said, that's false. She said that emotions are one of God's highest creations. It's like one of the highest faculties and gifts that we can be given from God. And I was really confused after she said that, because I had some really important people in my life say some really awful things to me over the last couple of years. And I didn't understand why they would say those things, being in the positions that they were in, whether it be professional or personal. Being in the positions that they were in, why would they spew that crap out of their mouth? And then I realized something. Their perception is only as big as they can comprehend. So if they're at a stage in their life where they're learning and they're growing and they're developing their mindset and they're rewiring from their past traumas and yada, 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 they're only going to perceive things how they can perceive it. And I can't be upset about that because I did more work on myself and had to do a lot of intensive work. I can't expect someone else to do the same thing. And what I realized in my circle was that for several years, I've been actually in network marketing for almost 5 years. I've been doing a lot of work on myself while a lot of people around me in my circle have not been. And that's okay. I mean, that's on them. It has nothing to do with me, but it impacted my day to day, to be honest with you. It impacted my energy level. It created some bitterness within our community, like I'm not gonna lie, some jealousy, and and it hindered so many people. But for me personally, I was taken advantage of. And because of what I was learning, I didn't mind sharing it with everyone. But the hardest part was they took what I was learning and tried to say that they had learned it. And they hadn't even done the work or the practice. They were just copying what I had said. And that's not truthful. It's great to give the information, but it's the wrong energy. Your energy isn't matching appropriately, so it's false. It's not authentic. And it pissed me off at first. I'm not going to lie. But then I was like, I taught them something. So I had to flip the script instead of being upset about it and getting like down in the dumps, right? And like thinking, oh, they don't even value me enough to let me talk about that. Instead, I had to say, they did learn something from our conversation. They did choose to, work on themselves in this area. If it didn't impact them, they wouldn't have talked about it, right? And so you never know what you're going to hear or from someone else, and then you're going to take that bits and parts of it or all of it and go give it to somebody else. And it's so important that you do. It's just like with this podcast, share it with somebody. Like let them hear from you or from me and just share it with them. You never know how it's going to impact somebody. And that's what I realize, it's part of letting go is also that receiving. You have to be willing to receive what's good for you and let go of what's no longer good for you. Maybe it's still good for you, but it's just the time is expired. That's okay too. Expirations are on everything, right? Everything has an expiration. Whether we choose to believe that or not, everything has an expiration. And with expirations, the reason why they're there is because usually you're best by, like everything is best by this date, right? By this expiration date. So imagine if you've got these relationships and they're burning out and it's exhausting you and the other person, and you can tell, and it's very obvious. And it's not something that you can build on or even grow and like grow more with each other, right? Like it's just fizzled out. It's okay to let that go. It's okay to say this isn't going to serve me or them anymore, and you can just release them and send love. I send so much unconditional love to this person. I pray that their entire life is incredible and that they have just so much abundance and love in their life, and I send them off into the universe. God be with them. There's nothing wrong with that. Pardon me. There's nothing wrong with that. And we struggle to do that all the time as people. And so think about everybody and everything in your life today. What do you want your life to look like in a year from now? What do you want it to look like 1 year from now? Heck, 6 months from now. You don't have to wait a year. And then what do you want to look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, right? What do you want your end results to be? When I think about that, I'm not being selfish. We were designed to do great things. And we all have such incredible gifts. But if people aren't going to acknowledge those and recognize them and jump in and take the control of being able to obtain those things and take the action that comes with it, but also the mindset work that comes with it, um, that's okay. That's their choice. But I'm going to do that. And so my life looks so different today because when they say, when you're on your journey and like, you're you're not going to have a ton of people, like a giant crowd around you. They're not lying. I've cut a lot of ties the last couple of years with people, the last few years, but it was so needed. And like I said, if they're listening, I love you. It's very unconditionally. It's not personal. It's something that I needed to do for me because I was hanging on to other people's stories. I was hanging on to other people's emotions and their energy, and they weren't doing any of the work on themselves. So I was getting all of it, and it was exhausting. And I would be spending time with them for a few hours, half a day. And by the end of that, it would take me a week to 2 weeks to recover. It was just horrible. And so I stopped holding on to those people and things. And then I started working on myself, focusing on myself and really working on my insides and like my thoughts, my mindset, my everything, and my energy levels. And I had to learn how to not let the outside world impact my inside. And that's also part of letting go is, how are you going to do that? We're going to talk more about that in another podcast. That'll be another topic we do discuss. But it just took practice and it took a lot of journaling. I started doing journaling, and the journaling really helped because I was able to put my thoughts on paper and kind of figure out what I wanted and what I didn't want. And it's so funny because a lot of people will do those pros and cons lists. Those work fine if you want. I personally don't do those. I personally look at what I want, and then I see, is everything I have in my life right now aligning to what I want? And I'm honest, and I'm very honest about it and intentional. And if there's something that's not, I ask, how can it be? Like, can I adjust something so that it is aligned? And if the answer is no, I know it needs to go. And if the answer is yes, then I do my best to try to change that alignment, do a reset, and try it again. Um, but if the answer is no, the answer is no. And I'm not afraid of no's anymore. And so I go with it, and I release and I let it go, and I give it to God and the universe, and I thank him for the time, and I go about my day, and I don't focus on it anymore. And I think that was the hardest part for me, was the focus on it anymore. I was always so afraid of hurting someone's feelings or opinions or like gossip, because people make up some crazy things about you. Um, that it hindered me. And so I'm here to tell you, letting go is allowed. You're allowed to let go. You're allowed to create a safe space for you, your children, your family. And you don't have to have any guilt about it. And so we're going to talk more about guilt in another time. We're going to share a little bit more about that. And just know that I believe in you. And I am so excited to see what happens when you begin releasing some of these old habits, old patterns, behaviors, people, toxicity, all the things that no longer serve you. It's going to feel weird at first. Just know that's normal. Just keep going and creating new, healthier habits that are going to align with your goals and your future self, and just love yourself through it. I hope this helps somebody. Have a great day.